All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Lay the Points podcast. I am your host, Kendall Caps, alongside my co-host here, Jordan Charo. Jordan, another week of preseason in the books, another week closer to getting to when the games actually count.
Yeah, tuning into week 2 of the preseason, it was, usually since there's 3 now, the second game is usually kind of more the starters play, and then the third game everyone kind of sits out. So we got to see a little more of what these teams might look like, at least like a quarter or maybe even a half that they played. So yeah, man, like I'm just ready for the season to start. Like week 3, I mean, like the third week of the preseason, it's just kind of like whatever. So I'm just ready to get this rolling. So, but there's a lot to break down.
There is. And like normally, I don't pay a ton of attention to preseason. I don't put very much stock in it. But I've been doing a ton of research for my 5 fantasy football leagues that I'm in, which my wife, she's thrilled about that, let me tell you. But because of that and needing to do as much research, I've actually been following quite intently. And there's definitely been, some interesting news and notes that have come out so far during the preseason. And maybe one of the biggest talking points so far has been the quarterback battle in Pittsburgh with Mitchell Trubisky and the rookie Kenny Pickett going at it. And Pickett has looked outstanding. And there's been a lot of pressure now put on Coach Tomlin. How long can you really hold Pickett back? I think a lot of people expect Trubisky to get the start when the season rolls around in a couple weeks. But with how good Pickett has looked so far in the preseason, you have to wonder, is it time? We've seen it from so many other teams where you got to get them some experience and see what they really have. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Does a rookie give you the best chance to win? And Mike Tomlin, he's an old school coach. I mean, he's still going to run the football a lot with Najee Harris, try to control the clock and not put too much pressure on whoever's quarterbacking. But I just think how coaches are in the NFL, they're paid to try to win as many games as possible. Pickett might be the more exciting, could possibly get you a lot of excitement back in Pittsburgh early in the season, but I think he's going to roll with Trubisky. I think he's going to roll with the guy who's done it before. Trubisky didn't play great in Chicago, but he's seen a lot of defenses. He just has a better feel right now, and I'm sure Mike Tomlin is a lot more comfortable with a guy who's actually done it. But I would not be surprised if Trubisky struggles early, that we might see Kenny Pickett maybe by week 6. But yeah, like he's played really well in the preseason so far, but like again, he's not going against number 1 defenses yet. So, but for him to be out there and to be playing well is a very good sign.
Yeah, it's
So
encouraging for Steelers fans, I'm sure. And to your point, not only does Trubisky have obviously NFL experience, he's been in the league for 5 years, he's got 50 starts under his belt. But one thing that I think will make a big difference for him and the Steelers, assuming he starts the season, is he's accustomed to playing behind really poor offensive lines. Chicago's offensive line was a mess the entire time he was there. In Pittsburgh, 4 years, they have not drafted an offensive lineman in the first 2 rounds of the draft in over a decade. That is pretty astounding. Clearly, Pittsburgh, they're amazing at drafting and developing talent on the outsides and the skill position players, but they have just neglected their offensive line. I'm sure Najee Harris is kind of like, can I get a little help here? So I would think that Trubisky makes a little bit more sense. He's mobile. He can make plays from outside the pocket. So I agree. I think Trubisky is the logical choice early on. But at the end of the day, we all know that this is going to be Pickett's team. So it's just a matter of time when they're going to pull that trigger. But speaking of quarterbacks, so the Panthers, they finally named their starter, officially naming Baker Mayfield their starter out there. I mean, I think we all kind of figured that was going to be the case. But how interesting is it that he joined the team with Sam Darnold? Those two went 1-2 among quarterbacks in that draft, with Baker going first to Cleveland. And a lot of people thought they made a mistake at the time. It obviously didn't work out well for Cleveland, but Sam Darnold clearly has not worked out well anywhere he's been so far. But yeah, I mean, I think Baker should be an upgrade to that offense. DJ Moore might finally have a competent thrower that can get him the football. But I thought that was, it was good for them to at least establish it. You don't have to worry as the regular season closes in. Baker knows it's his team, and the team can kind of rally around that.
Yeah, when the Panthers traded for Baker Mayfield, excuse me, I wasn't surprised when they named him the starter. I just thought he would be able to beat out Sam Darnold because Sam Darnold, he had a lot of chances last year and he just couldn't get the job done. I don't think Matt Rule really believes much in Sam Darnold, even though in all his pressers he says he does. So you don't make a trade for something like Baker Mayfield if you really don't have faith and you don't want to like blow another season with Sam Darnold. So for him to go in with the short time that Baker had, it doesn't surprise me that he had, you know, basically like a couple weeks and a couple preseason games to win the job. So, like as far as the Panthers go, like I think Baker will make them, uh, like an average team. I think they need a lot of work on their team. So I think they'll at least be competitive compared to last year.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Baker will go in and he'll have some really good games and then he'll have some stinkers. And that's just kind of how he's been, because, Cleveland, they have a great offensive line when he was there. And Nick Chubb was just like, they had a great running back and they had some receivers
Yeah,
there.
they had everything you needed, just about.
Yeah, and and I think he's going to a team. He's getting Christian McCaffrey, and I love Christian McCaffrey, but he gets banged up. Like the last couple of years, he gets dinged up a lot. So but they do have DJ Moore, and then who's the help me out with the other wide receiver
Robbie Anderson, but I
Robbie
wouldn't expect
Anderson,
much from him, especially after he called out Baker before they traded for him.
right? So I don't have really high expectations on the Panthers, but I definitely think he'll make them somewhat competitive. But
Yeah.
it didn't surprise me that he got named the starter.
Another interesting quarterback battle is playing out in Seattle, and apparently Pete Carroll is reportedly toying with the idea of playing both Geno Smith and Drew Lock in week 1. I feel like we've seen coaches occasionally try to do something like this. I can't think of a time where it worked. And
Well,
Pete
yeah,
Carroll's a defensive guy who maybe he's just grasping at straws at this point.
it doesn't work. Don't buy into this. This is ridiculous. Like as a 49er fan, I
Especially when it's
heard
two quarterbacks that are not very good, particularly.
right, right. Yeah, you said a quarterback battle, and I was like, is it a battle? Is it?
I mean, it's
Um,
still a battle if they're two
right.
equally subpar
Sure.
quarterbacks.
Of course. But I've heard this before. Like, as a 49er fan, Jim Harbaugh thought, oh, like we're going to play Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick together. And then I heard, oh, we're going to play Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo together. They're going to like take, take a series off. I'm like, stop it. Like,
Yeah,
you can't find a rhythm as a quarterback like that.
yeah,
Like, sure, if you want to do a trick play or whatever, fine. But you cannot run with two quarterbacks. You're going to confuse your offensive line. Like you're going to confuse everybody, and it's just
yeah,
not going to work.
yeah.
So,
It's hilarious to see that happening, though, because I think, we talked about it when we talked about the Seahawks over under last week, and I don't think either one of us have very much expectation for that team.
no,
And this just goes to further cement my loving the under, because I just struggle to see how they're going to win games.
yeah,
But one of
I
the
mean,
other teams that we talked about last week that,
mhm.
I think I had a lot higher hope for this year, and now there's a little bit of concern, is the New Orleans Saints. And part of the reason for that, Michael Thomas, which, he's basically missed almost 2 years, and he was expected to be fully healthy, ready to go coming into this year. Jameis is fully healthy. They added Chris Olave. They get Jarvis Landry. They have a great defense. All the reasons that I talked about, I love their over last week. And now Michael Thomas is dealing with a hamstring injury. He missed the preseason game. He hasn't returned to practice yet. I mean, that's a serious question mark. And if you don't have that A1 type receiver that they were hoping they were going to have, that could be a serious setback for them.
Yeah, if you look at last year, they didn't have Michael Thomas at all, and they were literally like waiting to see what happened in that 49er Rams game. And if the Niners would have lost, then they're in.
Yeah.
So, like they did that last year, like without Michael Thomas, and Jameis got hurt. So like as much as you say, like, um, the injury, obviously, getting him back on the field and working his way back. I mean, the preseason should have been and camp should have been a great opportunity for him to kind of get those reps. So, I think when he comes back, it's going to take some time, But I think him just being out there once he gets back, I think he needs to be like very cautious and make sure he's fully ready to go so he doesn't lose another year
Yeah.
if he rushes back too quick. But I think the Saints are going to be all right. I mean, like, I think they're going to sling it. Like, they might not even have Michael Thomas or Alvin Kamara for, I don't know, the first 4 weeks at least, maybe. So,
Well, no, I
Jameis,
mean, Kamara, all the reports are Kamara, there's a very good chance he doesn't get suspended at all this year.
when are they going to know? Because fantasy football has like started.
So the next hearing for him, because his lawyer suspended the case to September 29th. So nothing can happen in the courts until September 29th. And even if there was a
Oh.
ruling, which there's not expected to be one on that date, but even if there was, there would then be an appeal. The earliest Kamara could be suspended would be around mid-season. But because of that, and because they're not actually expecting a ruling on September 29th, by the time a ruling does come and then an appeal is heard, it will be at the earliest, more than likely at the end of the season, which is why most people believe Roger Goodell is probably just going to wait to suspend him at the beginning of next season.
So in this process, is he still able to play
Yeah,
until? Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, I take that back because I just got filled in with that news. So, but I think Jameis, even without Michael Thomas, like I think they're gonna like sling the ball around. I think Olave, hopefully, and Jarvis Landry. I think all those guys are gonna get a fair amount of catches. Jameis just kind of has a reputation. I mean, he can put up big time numbers. Big time numbers.
He can, but he can also put up big time turnovers, as we've seen.
Yes.
First 30-30 guy ever. All right.
Yeah.
So, how about we dive into our NFL over unders? Last week, we tackled both the NFC West and the NFC South. So, we delved a lot into some of that stuff that we were just talking about. But now let's go over to the NFC North this week. And we'll lead off with the team that is, the favorites to win the division, that seemingly wins it every season, that I know you have probably a pretty strong take on. It's the Green Bay Packers. They're over under sitting at 10.5. What do you think coming into this season?
I don't like it. I think I'm definitely taking the under. And there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, you start with number one, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room for sure.
Yeah, and I don't really trust the receiving core that they have. I mean, obviously, like they lost Adams and Valdez Scantling, but it's them being familiar with Aaron Rodgers, with their game plan every single week, and just being super comfortable with each other. And Valdez Scantling was always a deep threat. So now you just incorporate. Help me with their receivers.
Alan Lazard
Alan Lazard
and Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson. Dobbs and Watson are the rookies.
and Randall Cobb.
And
So you
Randall
have
Cobb. Yeah, I forgot about Cobb. I mean,
so
I'm
you
pretty
have
sure everyone's going to forget about Randall Cobb.
right. So you have two rookies and you have
An
Lazard.
aging veteran. And now Lazard is expected to be their number one.
Right.
He's shown in the past last year that he's capable of at least being a number two. I think
Right.
he's realistically probably a number two, and they don't have a number one. And it's going to be really interesting. There's reports recently that Aaron Rodgers has been having one-on-one lunches with the rookie Romeo Dobbs recently to try to build that rapport. With Christian Watson getting hurt early, that pretty much took him out of the mix to be able to find that rapport in camp with Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And, it was well publicized over the last couple of weeks, the struggles that they were having on offense in practice and all the drops from some of their young receivers, Aaron Rodgers calling them all out. So I agree that there's all the reasons in the world to be skeptic, to be, to be concerned about an over 10.5. But I don't trust the rest of that division in knowing that they get to play the NFC East in the AFC East, which in my estimation is the NFC East, I believe, is the worst team in the NFC. So they get 4 games against the worst division in their conference.
Mhm.
And then the AFC East, which I think is the third worst, or the second worst. I'd say the AFC South is probably worse than the AFC East. But I mean, I don't believe in the Patriots this year, and the Jets are a train wreck. So I think that schedule is relatively light for a team that won their division last year. And obviously the Bucs game and the Rams game as their 2 random NFC games will be difficult. But getting the Titans as their random AFC opponent, I think, is helpful because I think the Titans are going to take a step back this year. Whereas the number 2 team that we'll get to, Minnesota, is stuck actually having to play the Colts, who I think will be better this year. So that's a disadvantage to them. So I'm not going to say that they will go 11-6, but I do think they win the division again. And personally, I'm not confident enough to say that they will go 10-7 or worse. So I
Mhm.
am really hesitant to go either side on that one.
So you're not. So you're staying away.
Yeah, I'm staying away from the Packers.
I think the Packers win 10 games.
Okay, I mean that gets them just under.
Yep. Yeah. I do not see
Question
them winning
is,
11.
question is, does it lead to a division crown this year? Speaking of the next team, the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people like them a lot this year
Mhm.
and have them potentially supplanting the Packers as the NFC North champions. Their over under sitting at 9.5. And so far, there's no money. There's money on both sides, so nothing is tilted. So there's a lot of people who like it both ways. They obviously play the same divisions, but they get the Saints, the Cardinals, and the Colts as their other three random games, which are no gimmies by any means. I don't know about you, but I think despite a lot of people loving the Vikings this year, I don't think they did enough to address their defense. I don't like their secondary and their linebacking core, and I think it's going to rear its ugly head. And I think they're going to have once again another underwhelming season of 8-9, 9-8, and come under.
Mm. Well, I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to win the NFC North.
You do.
I
So
think
do you
they're going
think
to
they
be
win
better.
10 or do you think they win 11 and win it outright?
I don't know about the over under.
Well, if
It's
you got the Packers going 10 and
I know.
7,
Yeah.
you must like the Vikings over at 9.5 then if you got them winning the division. They have to win at least 10.
Yes. Yes. I like the Vikings over. I think they win 10 games. And the reason why is because Kirk Cousins, he's Kirk Cousins. He's a solid quarterback, but he actually had a really sneaky good year last year. He had
He
33
did.
touchdowns, 7 interceptions.
Yep.
And I always think about the Minnesota Vikings. I think about their success this way. Dalvin Cook, when he's healthy, he is dynamic, but he's never healthy. And that's the problem. He always gets banged up. But when he's playing, man, he opens up their offense. And, Justin Jefferson, I think he's going to be one of the best wide receivers this year. And they
I
still
mean, I
have,
think he might be I think he might surpass Cooper Kupp this year as the best receiver in football. In
yeah,
fantasy drafts, I'm taking Jefferson over Kupp, and I know that sounds crazy after the
that's
year
crazy.
Kupp just had,
Yeah.
but I think there's logical regression with touchdowns for Kupp. Kupp isn't going to score 16 touchdowns again this
No.
year. And Jefferson, he's just gotten better and better. When he came in as a rookie 2 years ago, he set almost all the rookie marks receiving, and then he followed that up with an outstanding sophomore campaign. So I agree that their skill position players are pretty elite. And even Alexander Madison as a backup back, even
Hmm.
when Dalvin Cook has missed time, Madison is legit. He could start for half the teams in the NFL. So
Right.
they have weapons. I like KJ Osborne a lot more than I like Adam Thielen. The last couple of years,
Hmm.
Thielen's production has really dropped off. His targets have come down. His catch rate has come down. So I'm not a huge fan in him. But again, I still have some serious questions about their defense and their ability to limit opponents. And at the end of the day, if there's a pivotal game late in the season and you have to rely on Kirk Cousins to win that really big game, which maybe the NFL flexes it into prime time,
Yep.
we know he's something like 2-14 in prime time in his career.
Right.
So because of that, I still got to take the under. I don't believe him yet.
But I also look at one thing, and like we didn't talk about yet, but their head coach. I mean, Mike Zimmer was there last year, and
Yeah.
apparently, I heard there was rumors that him and Kirk Cousins did not like each other. And you're bringing in a guy like Kevin O'Connell, who was the offensive coordinator for the Rams last year,
Yep.
and we saw how good the Rams offense was. Now, I know you have all those weapons, but the Vikings have weapons too. And if you can get really creative, I mean, look what Kyle Shanahan did with Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean,
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo didn't even throw the ball 20 yards down the field. I mean, he just got creative. Obviously, like you use your weapons, but I mean, we don't know how good Kevin O'Connell could be. He could be amazing. Like he could be another Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type of coach, really offensive, creative minded coach.
Yeah, that's a
So
fair point.
yeah, so I take that in consideration because Mike Zimmer, he's a good coach, but he
He's a
obviously couldn't.
defensive first coach. And
Right.
if you look across the NFL now, most of the defense first NFL head coaches are struggling. And part of
Hmm.
that is because the league is changing.
Mhm.
And it's become significantly more of an offensive oriented league, a passing league to
Yep.
some regard. And so
And
you
that's why
need to
I
be
look at
creative.
And that's why I look at Minnesota and I look at their offensive weapons and, like, when Kirk Cousins is in a rhythm, he can really get it to his receivers, and he's gonna have weapons, and then you have Dalvin Cook back there, like, I think their offense is gonna be better than it was last year. Now, again, the defense, but if they can put up, 25, 30 points every game, like, your defense might be able to make some plays down the stretch and win you
It
some
should be
games.
interesting. I mean, they're certainly a talented team. All right, how about let's move on to the team that normally this is Chicago's spot because Detroit has been the doormats for so long in the NFC South, but Vegas actually has the Lions as the team to finish third. They're over under sitting at 6.5, and interestingly, the over juice is at -125. So the betting public really likes the Lions to win 7 or more games.
I love the Lions to win 7 or more games this year.
Wow. Okay, so you're with the
Yeah,
betting public.
yeah, like, watching Hard Knocks and, Dan Campbell, like, like, I had my questions at the beginning of last year, but you know what? The Lions played hard last year,
They did.
and they have some good receivers, and, like, they just play tough and hard football, and there's gonna be some games that they're gonna win, in the season that you're just not gonna expect them to win, but they're gonna come in ready to play, and I know Jared Goff, like, he's an average quarterback, but he can make some bonehead mistakes here and there. But I think they're going to be good, and DeAndre Swift in the backfield. I mean, people are taking him really high in fantasy too. So I'm high on the Lions. Like, not high to make the playoffs, but I definitely think that they're going to
You like the
win
over?
set. I think they're going to win like 7 games. Like, I'm not going to get crazy and think they're going to win more than that, but I think they will cover that over and hit 7 games.
You know, I get all the reason for optimism, and I do think they will be a better football team. And like you said, there's no doubt about it that they played hard at all 17 weeks last year, and you saw it. And there was a lot of close losses, and sometimes you need to learn how to win. And I do think that they will win more than they won last year, but the bar is so low because they win 3, 4 games every year that I still like the under. Give me the plus 105. Obviously getting to play some of the teams. They get to play the Giants from the NFC East, which is helpful. They get to play the Jets. I think they'll win both of those. They'll probably beat the Seahawks when they play them. The Jaguars, that's a really interesting game in their random AFC opponent that I could see going either way. But I don't think they're good enough yet to beat any of the teams that they're just going to be legit underdogs, touchdown underdogs against. So for them to hit that 7 mark, they pretty much have to beat the Giants, the Jets, the Seahawks, the Falcons, the Jaguars. They have to win like all of those to get to 7 more than likely, because I think they'll beat Chicago once or twice as well. And I just don't think they're good enough to win all of those games against other bad teams. So for that reason, and I still have reservations, just like the Vikings, about their defense. That at times they look decent, but other times they're just lost, especially in the secondary. Jeff Okuda has apparently looked really good in camp. He might have locked down the starting cornerback spot, which they drafted him with the third overall pick in 2020, and they're finally starting to see and reap some of the rewards of doing that. So I think they'll be better almost across the board in most places. But between Jared Goff, I think he has limitations. Outside of Amon Ra, I don't see anyone on the outside that can make plays. And
Hawkinson.
at tight end, yeah, no, I like TJ. He's a really good player. He somewhat disappointed, I think, a lot of people last year. I think people were expecting a little bit more out of him and didn't
Mhm.
quite get it. But yeah, I mean, again, I think they will be better and they will win 5 or 6 games, which is a step in the right direction. But I'm not ready to just say they're going to go from being a perennial 2, 3 win team to suddenly winning 7 games. I don't think they got that much better overnight.
I think I just buying into the Hard Knocks.
All
I
right.
think
Well, how
that's what
about
it is.
Chicago, last team in the NFC North? And obviously, a lot of people are not fans of them. So they're over under sitting at 5.5. And the betting public is hammering the over. Excuse me. Yeah. Hammering the over. It's at
What?
-145, the under plus 125. So despite the limitations, I think maybe everyone is expecting Justin Fields to just take that next big leap this year. But I don't know about you, but I'm not a believer. I really like the under here.
No, I'm not a believer. I'm hammering the under. Are you kidding me? I mean, just
Yeah, tell me
Yeah,
where there's 6 wins on their schedule. I mean,
I
maybe
don't
they beat
know.
the Giants, they beat the Jets because they get to play those same 2 divisions. So let's I mean, they could lose to both of those teams. That's how bad Chicago is, especially on offense. And outside of Cole Kmet, they don't really have anybody that I mean, Darnell Mooney, I guess, is a decent receiver, but
David
Justin Fields, I
Montgomery
still think relies so much on his legs,
and
and
David
I've
Montgomery
yet
too.
to see him. What's that? I'm sorry.
David Montgomery too.
Oh yeah, no, Montgomery's a good runner. I'm talking about like skill position players on the outside that Justin Fields could get the ball to. I just don't see enough, and I don't trust. Especially they lost some key pieces on defense, and the defense was already slowly starting to take step backs the last couple of years, and
Yep.
now Khalil Mack is gone. I forget the name of the defensive lineman that left as well. So they lost some key pieces on defense that was already aging. So I think they might be even worse, putting that offense in really tough spots. And then there are 3 random games: Panthers, Niners, Texans. Maybe they beat the Panthers, maybe they beat the Texans. They won't beat the Niners. For them to get to 6 wins, you look at their schedule, I just don't see 6 winnable games. So the fact that the betting public, in a way, they're doing me a favor because they're setting that number and I get plus 125 on the under, I'm taking that to the bank all day long.
Yep. There's not much to be said from me. I don't think they're going to be very good. I think Justin Fields, he might not even last because the guy is going to be running for his life and he's going to be getting sacked and hit so many times. And God forbid anything happens to him. Uh, I mean, they're
All
in
right,
deep
well,
trouble.
that wraps up the NFC North. What about the NFC East? We talked about wanting to capture 2 divisions each week, and now we have, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, which for my entire life, they've been known as America's team, but I can't think of why that is. I know someone once who's much older than I was said it was because America felt bad that they kept losing to the Steelers in the 70s. I don't know if that's accurate. Obviously, the brand is massive. It's one of the biggest athletic brands, if not the
Right.
biggest athletic brand in the world. So maybe that's why. But I know just as many people that dislike the Cowboys as ones that do like the Cowboys. Um, maybe the star, it's so recognizable. I don't know what it is, but I know this much. They're not going to be as good as they were last year. And no one has won that division back-to-back years since the Eagles did it in 2003 and 2004. So it's been almost 20 years since we've seen that. And I'm not ready to crown the Cowboys back-to-back champions.
Nope. And the over under is 10.5. And I like the under. I do not
Yeah,
like the Cowboys to win 11 games. Nope.
I mean,
Because they
they're in serious trouble. You got to figure offensively. Zeke has
mhm.
looked like a shell of himself, but because of his contract, they're stuck paying him and they're stuck playing him, which
Yep.
relegates Tony Pollard, the better tailback at this point, to the bench or to the point where they're like, we have to get him on the field. So now they're lining him up outside as a wide receiver, and he is a good receiving back, but he's not a wide receiver. And then obviously Amari Cooper's gone. Cedric Wilson, the guy who took the top off the defense last year, he's gone. James Washington, they brought in, out for the year, got hurt in camp. CeeDee Lamb is dealing with stitches in his foot after cutting himself at home. He hasn't talked about what he did, but he's expected to be fine for the regular season. But outside of him and Dalton Schultz, I mean, where are they going on this offense?
I don't know. You tell me. Like, who else do they have on for wide receivers? I mean, I don't know.
Noah
I mean,
Brown, yeah.
I mean, the Cowboys have always been that team where Dak's going to throw the ball like 40 plus times a game. So, yeah, like I don't know who's going to throw to. Like I guess in fantasy, draft Dalton Schultz for sure because
Yes,
he's
I
going to
think
be a good.
Schultz quietly is going a tier below where he should. If you look at his production last year
Mm,
and knowing that especially early in the season they're going to have to rely on him further, he's going in the tier with Hawkinson and Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard. I think you should elevate him a little bit in fantasy just because he's going to be force fed the ball alongside CeeDee Lamb, who, for the same reason, I love this year. He's going early mid second round in most leagues, and I think he's going to put up much better value. I wouldn't be shocked if CD puts up wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 overall numbers this year.
mhm. Well, I mean, I agree with you with Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard should be starting, but with the whole Zeke situation with his contract, it's not like you're not going to bench Zeke. So, I mean, he's going to play. So, I don't really know how much to expect out of Zeke this year. I mean, he hasn't really, ex- you know, been exciting the last couple of years. So, I don't
Yeah,
know. I
I
mean,
mean,
like,
and he doesn't look like the same explosive player, and I
yeah,
think part of that is they ran him into the ground, his usage
mhm,
at tailback, and he's still a good running back. He still had just barely over 1,000 yards last year. He scored 10 times, but most of the times Pollard got them to the one, and then he finished it off. I had
yep,
Pollard, and I kept getting so annoyed last year in fantasy leagues. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't like I like the under a lot. I think they go 10-7, 9-8 because they are still a talented football team, but I don't like their coaching. I think
yep,
coming out of last year when they led the NFL in penalties, and that's normally a reflection of coaching. And then what do they do in their first preseason game? Commit 17 penalties. And then
yep,
they commit 9 more last week, and people were glad. And it's like, that's how low your bar is that you only committed 9 this
yeah.
week. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if they struggle early, if McCarthy doesn't make it through the season and Dan Quinn, which the fans are already clamoring for him, takes over as coach. But yeah, I mean, their schedule is difficult. They have to play the NFC North, the AFC South, and then they get the Rams, Bucks, and Bengals as their
Mm.
3 other random games. They easily could lose all 3 of those. I think they're going to have a hard time winning 11 games. So yeah, give me that under. Even though the betting public likes the under as well, I'm willing to lay that juice.
Yeah, I think that Mike McCarthy, if Dallas doesn't go to the playoffs and make it to like the NFC Championship game, he's gone. This is it. Like this is his last chance. Jerry Jones has been had Mike McCarthy's back for a long time, and this is their last chance. But one thing Dallas does have going for them is they have a good defense. Like their defense is going to be legit. So
And
I
Micah
mean,
Parsons is phenomenal. Watching that guy, I mean, I'm not a fan by any means of the Cowboys, but you'd have to be blind to not recognize what that guy brings to the table.
and Trayvon Diggs too.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Diggs. He reminds me of Antonio Cromartie.
Hmm.
He will intercept a lot of passes and make a lot of big plays. He's very instinctual and very aggressive,
But
but
cover
because of that,
skills,
he also gives up a lot of chunk plays.
yeah,
And we saw
yep,
that a lot last year. And in camp, he's been getting burned by no-name guys.
yeah,
There's videos that have surfaced. So I'm not as high on him, but overall as a defense, I do think they'll be better, but not good enough for them to win 11 games.
true.
All right. Well,
Yep.
how about the team that a lot of people think might supplant them to win the division? That's the Philadelphia Eagles. They're over under sitting a game back at 9.5. Again, the betting public is hammering the under. The juice is at minus 130 that they don't get to 10 wins. You can get plus 110 if you go with the over. I like the over. I think they're the team that wins the division this year.
Agreed. 100% agreed. I think that they're going to win at least 10 games this year. I think Jalen Hurts is there's a lot of hype coming for him coming into this year. They added uh,
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown,
That's
and then
such a big addition because Devonta Smith is a good receiver, but
right.
he's has a limited skill set. And
Hmm.
you bring in a specimen like AJ Brown to be your 1A receiver, and
Yep.
now everyone else falls in line in that passing game. And we already know the Eagles can run the football. Even when Miles Sanders was hurt last year, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, these
Yep.
guys looked good. And Miles Sanders is banged up again right now, but I'm not concerned because we've seen with that offensive line and that running game, anyone can perform well. And now it's only better now that you have that threat in AJ Brown. So I'm bullish on the Eagles. I'm with you. I think they win 10, maybe even 11 games this year and
Yep.
take over that division.
Yep. And they also have Dallas Goddard too. And he
Yeah.
has a nice connection with Jalen Hurts. And then like their defense is going to be good. Like they still have a pretty solid defensive line. Fletcher Cox is getting older, but how about the behemoth they drafted out of Georgia? I mean, there's been talks about this guy just mauling people. Jordan Willis.
It,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jordan Davis. Jordan
yeah,
Davis.
Jordan Davis. I'll be honest. Out of all of the first round picks, that might have been my favorite. Like I watched him play a lot at Georgia. This guy is something else. He is Ted Washington. He is going to command double teams almost every play that he's on the field, which then tilts the play toward the defense when you have to do that. So yeah, I agree. I think their defense, there's still some questions in the secondary for sure, and they've struggled in camp. So that's something that they're going to have to watch out for. But thankfully for them, Dallas doesn't have the weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb to expose that when they play them this year. So I think for a number of reasons, I'm bullish on the Eagles. Um, Next in the division is the Washington Commanders, which we talked about them a few weeks ago. And at the
That's your
time,
team. This is your team.
it
Outside of the
was my
Patriots,
team.
you
It
yeah,
was
okay.
my team. And
All right.
then in the last couple of weeks, more and more information has come out, and it's really concerning to me. So I like the fact that Carson Wentz was there, and it was the best quarterback that McLaurin has had since he entered the league.
Mhm.
And I thought the defense was underrated. They were a little banged up last year, but we've seen the last couple of years what they could do, especially with that front four. But now between Chase Young's injury and Carson Wentz struggling in camp, like with consistently just being accurate with the football and short to intermediate passes, it's really concerning. And in particular, I think the Chase Young injury, which I believe they put him on the PUP list, I
You
think
did. Yep.
they did. And
So he can't come back until week 5. He's out the
until
first
week
4
five.
weeks.
And
Yep.
that's a big blow for a defense that's so reliant on their ability to get to the quarterback.
Yep.
And knowing that there are limitations offensively, they need to be able to play from ahead, and that might be hard to do. So initially, I was bullish on their over and thought they had the outside chance to win that division, but now I'm really hesitant with the latest developments. And the betting public loves the under of any teams. It has hammered the under more so with Washington than any team. You have to lay minus 170 to
Hmm.
get the under for the Commanders right now. You can get plus 145 if you think they're going to win 9 plus. That's great juice to get going for you. But I can't do it with all those question marks.
So it's 8.5. That's the over under, and this is a team that I don't know. So I'm just staying away. I obviously kind of think like based on what you've said and how I've not been high on them from the beginning, I would lean towards the under. But
Yeah.
because I mean, who's their second wide receiver outside of Terry McLaurin?
I think the rookie, Jahan, can't recall his last name. He's
Okay.
a rookie. They used their first round pick on him. He's pretty solid, but he's
Okay.
still a rookie with Carson Wentz at quarterback. So
And then they have the stud running back, and you have a little nugget on him coming out of camp as well. Didn't you
well,
say that?
yeah. So, Antonio Gibson had been their bell cow back, and then they had used J.D.
Yep.
McKissick on third downs the last year or two. But Brian Robinson Jr. has exploded during camp and looked really, really good. And Ron Rivera really likes his ability to play three downs potentially. And knowing the Antonio Gibson struggles for one, and he struggles with health. He fumbled early
Mhm.
on in camp this year, was having issues with that again. And to the point where they relegated him to play on the special teams. So they took their starting running back of the last couple of years and were running him on special teams. And then he ran with the second team offense in preseason. So even though publicly Ron Rivera has stated Gibson is likely to start the season as the starter, all the tea leaves suggest otherwise. So they're muddled in the backfield, a mess and with the injuries, and who knows what we're really going to get with Carson Wentz. So unfortunately, I have to swallow my words from a few weeks ago where I thought I was really going to like them and like the over at the time. But knowing all the developments since then, and knowing I've never been that high on Ron Rivera as a head coach, I think that if I had to go, I'd go with the betting public and take the under like you.
Go back to Heineke, man. Give me more Heineke. I was a Heineke fan. I liked Heineke.
Hey, man, he outplayed Tom Brady in that playoff game that they lost
Yeah,
a
I
couple of
liked
years
him.
ago. Now,
Yeah.
granted,
So
that's catching lightning in a bottle, but all right.
well,
Well, I'll go
welcome.
and wrap it up. New York Giants. Feel like this has got to be one of the easiest bets on the board. It's astounding to me that Vegas still hasn't moved this line. Giants over under sitting at 7.5. The Huts.
No, no, no. I'm taking the under. 7.5, 8, 7.5 wins for the New York Football Giants, who've literally stunk for how many years? You know, like, and they're relying on Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, and I don't even know the receiver. Like, I don't even know the receivers.
Kenny Galladay is still there. Kadarius Toney is still there.
Kenny Galloway is never healthy. When he's
Yes.
healthy, he's great, but he's never healthy.
Well, and guess what? That's the same problem with the young, talented Kadarius Toney. He was in and out of the
Yeah.
lineup last year, and guess what? He hurt his hamstring this week, and he's hurt again. So they have no healthy running backs. Yes, they drafted Evan Neal to be their offensive anchor, offensive left tackle, and he is a beast for sure. Anytime you were a starter for 3-4 years at Alabama, like, I believe in you, and I think that will be a big upgrade. But as a whole, the line still isn't very good. So as great as Saquon is, there's only so much he can do when he's running behind a poor offensive line. I mean, I expect him to get plenty more dump offs, but in a weird way, I kind of think, even though the Giants would never say this publicly, they're almost punting on the season in this regard. They chose not to give Daniel Jones, or chose not to extend him on his 5th-year option. So the writing was on the wall that he's probably not going to come back. But as he enters the final year of his deal, it makes the appearance of like, hey, we're giving him that last chance to prove it, but they're not giving him the weapons and what he needs to be successful. I mean, I don't
Right.
know how they don't go out and try to improve the skill positions on the outside at all. And they didn't add any depth at running back. In fact, they lost depth at running back. And Saquon, even though he looks great in camp, he's still injury prone. We still haven't seen, Saquon play a full season practically since his rookie year.
Yep.
And in the defense, Kayvon Thibodeau, who should be a beast when he's healthy, got hurt in preseason. The MRI, I believe, came back clean, but their defense as a whole is not going to be very good either. A 7.5. Where are 8 wins coming from? I don't understand. How is this number not sitting at 5.5? So anyone who has an eye, I mean, you have to lay 145 to make the bet, but it's money in the bank. Lay that $150 to get $100 all day.
Yeah, I love the under on this. I mean, just like you said, it's easy. And I think maybe Vegas is looking at like somebody like Brian Dable, who was the offensive coordinator in Buffalo, and he'll be able to get creative with their offense. But, even with their tight end situation, Evan Ingram is good, but he's never healthy. So I don't know. This is kind of a no-brainer for me. I'm not too high on the Giants. I just don't think they're going to be very good. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be very good. I think Saquon is going to have the most unbelievable year ever to have them achieve 8 wins.
Yeah,
So
it's
just not
astounding to me. Like, I feel like the Giants,
like, what's the angle? Like, what are they seeing?
the Falcons, the Seahawks,
Bears.
the Texans, the Bears, maybe. I think the Bears might be a little bit better. The Texans, those 4 teams will battle it out for the worst in football. Like, there's almost no way the Giants go 8-9. I will eat my words come January.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'll do, but I will do something embarrassing if the Giants win 8 games this year.
Yeah. Don't worry, it's not going to happen. So you're in the but all right. Well, we covered the NFC, and we covered the over-unders for all those teams. Next week, we're going to jump into the AFC, and the first division that I want to talk about is going to be the best division of football. I think you know what that is, the AFC West.
Absolutely.
And I'm really curious to see who you really like in that division. And
I think I'm going to surprise you.
okay. All right. Well, everyone have a great week. Get ready for football. It'll be here before you know it. And for Jordan, that's Kendall, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.